Like to call to order the April regular school board meeting for Seaman USD 345. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Donna, would you like to lead us, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, thank you, everybody. Public communication, Ms. Candace, do we have anybody? Great. All right. Just need an adoption of the agenda, please.
We adopted as presented.
Second.
And moved into any discussion? Hearing none, please raise a hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Superintendent, oh, no, I'm sorry. We have Learning Without Limits. We have Miss Kate Talley will be presenting on her Kid Win teams that qualified for state. Miss Talley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you guys tell them when you, okay, this is a you thing, not an evening. Here, you wanna show them your team?
I did hear you guys were exceptional at the presentation part at the state.
It's except to be bad or good.
Good.
Means very, very good.
Hey, right,
Very
you guys turn around and just tell them what you did, okay?
You don't have, no, I don't need your whole presentation.
Yeah. So. It's 10 minutes.
I mean.
Okay, so
I
this
take
is
it.
the first year we started with Kansas Kid Win Energy. We started with about 20 kids. We're only allowed to take 2 teams. And usually they want the max 4, but we took 12 because the more the merrier. And we came in, we won to go to state in regionals for both teams out of all of them.
And how many total teams from regionals get to go to state?
12.
Two.
No,
Oh,
from each regional.
From each region, 2.
Two.
Total of 12.
And you took both teams?
We took both teams.
Uh-huh.
So we took both teams. What we did find out at state, though, we went to state, we left at 6:15 this morning on Saturday. Relatively Saturday, okay, it all blends together. Alright. We found out that we're really good at presentation, knowledge, all those things, but nobody uses the standard Kid Wing base, so we gotta get to building some great things. We got about 19 joules to 15 joules, and that won us regionals, but the regionals, the state was about 36 to 40. So we got some work to do over the summer. Now, we're the youngest in a 4-5 category, so then next year we'll be in the same category. But we've been working since December. They come sometimes 5 days a week. Sometimes 5 days a week in the morning, 7:45 or 7:45 to 8:30, practicing constantly. All right, I'll stop talking. Liza, you share. About what? Whatever you want to do. We woke up early.
No, go ahead. Talk about what all of it.
Yeah.
Like what have you learned?
Well, with our gears, found out that a 32 to 1 gear ratio works better instead of the 8 to 1 gear ratio,
Why?
because
You get out of it.
we get higher joules with the 32 to 1 gear ratio.
Tell us about the plate.
Yeah, a whole bunch of blades, but we
What about this? Tell me about the design and why you chose cardboard and.
we chose cardboard because it was light and it's easy to curve. And
What's your judge lines? Try to make sure it's right. Should have it as well.
scoop ice cream.
Okay, all right, Max, elaborate. Tell about the plates.
We tried many different types of blades, like plastic, wooden, and cardboard, and we figured out that cardboard works the best.
And then they had to learn about pitch, use a protractor, all of those things. They learned about solar, they had to learn about snap circuits, breadboards, which we didn't even know. We figured that out at regionals. And they're much more, breadboards are snap circuits, but a lot more complicated. So
All different ways to produce electricity and measure electricity.
yeah,
And they were given an instant challenge for regionals. that included these programs they had never done before. And so they're given a challenge without knowing what it is. They get 30 minutes to complete that challenge, and both teams did really well. And then so when they went to state, they had a completely different challenge given to them. And both times, they both worked together really well and they presented themselves very well. So to work on something that you've never done before in a competition setting, I was really good for that.
So who's gonna tell me about Sharknado? That came to your school?
Tell about it. Matt, what can you tell?
Well, Shark Tunnel was really fun.
What
What's the
happened?
difference in it?
The difference between the regular wind tunnel and the shark tunnel is that the shark tunnel has a lot more power to it and it produces a lot more wind than a regular.
How many miles per hour? When does this?
And it's at least 20.
20 miles per hour.
Yeah, and a lot of them exploded, which was really fun. All the fun in the middle of competition, you're seeing, and the whole point is that you could decide how fast you wanted the tunnel to go. And so most kids put it up to the max to see what would happen. So we brought Jimmy, which is not blue or red. We named all our wind turbines
Good.
and we watched Jimmy explode.
Yeah.
They all like to talk to you, know.
Blue, red, and Jimmy.
Yeah.
And Jimmy got the short stick.
That one's blue, but with the red blades.
It's weird.
Yeah, I know.
I
crossed them.
Well, they like one of the turbines in the truck, they pretty much did land.
And then they had to do a ton of graphing and look at our data, which is something we don't do it. We do some, but like to actually analyze and interpret and realize it's been, I don't know, I have loved it and I would love to see this program grow within our district.
That's really cool. Yeah.
So it's amazing. Yeah.
Guys, nice job. Couldn't be more proud of you. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah.
And that's what learning's supposed to be about. So good job.
Lisa, come here.
Well, I think that's all. You guys wanna stay in here or you can go that way and you can
Good
go
job,
on to your
guys.
next project.
Thank you.
I'll take next.
Thank you, Miss. Thank you, Miss Sally.
Today. Do we need grand opening or
Oh,
of the redo?
yeah.
Oh,
Thank you.
Sorry, they lied.
You're okay. Okay, that was fantastic. We had a small little change in our agenda. We are going to have the financial audit come and present. Get over here, Lisa. And so we are going to move on to that.
Alrighty. Well, they were really cute and they got to play with sharks and I play with numbers, so it's not nearly as cool, but
Still fun.
yes, he probably geeked out about that. I geek out about numbers, so it makes everybody happy. So we've officially finished the 2025 fiscal year district audit. And tonight we will be joined virtually by Kyle with Jared Gilmore and Phillips to present the review of the audit. After he's done, I have just a few notes to go over about the audit and then we'll move on.
Great. Thanks, Lisa.
All right, well, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Like just said, I'm just here to walk you through kind of your blue packet and just kind of point out some things for you. So I'll actually start on page 1 in there. Pages 1 through 3 is the independent audit report. In this booklet, this report, as well as a couple at the back, are the only thing that really belongs to us as auditors. Everything else in here is the district's information and district's numbers. I'm just taking it and put it in the prescribed format. So on page 1, your first 3 paragraphs there at the top are your most important ones. The first one just talks about what we audit, which is the fund summary statement of regulatory basis receipts, expenditures, and unencumbered cash balances for the year ended June 30, 2025. Next paragraph talks about an adverse opinion on GAAP financials. Since the district elects to follow the KMAG, the Kansas Municipal Audit and Accounting Guide, which is a regulatory basis of accounting, that's a modified cash basis of accounting. we have to issue adverse opinion on GAAP financials due to material differences in your financial statement. With GAAP, you'd have things like receivables, debt, prepaids, etc. With KMAG, all that's simply on there is cash and accounts payable. That third paragraph is the most important one, and that's that unmodified opinion on the regulatory basis of accounting. We believe, based on our audit fieldwork, that the numbers presented herein are a material, accurate representation of what happened during the year for the district. So we issue that unmodified opinion, slang term clean opinion. It's the best opinion you can receive on your financial statement. Those next two paragraphs kind of touch on what I was talking about in regards to those adverse and unmodified opinions. And then there at the bottom of page 1, carrying over to page 2, we talk about management's responsibility for the audit. And then on page 2, we talk about our responsibility for the audit as well. And then finally, we talk some supplementary information required by KMAG, some additional schedules we'll see at the back. And then finally on page 3, that very last paragraph, it just talks about how because you receive such a large amount of federal grant dollars, you have to have that single audit each year. And that paragraph's just stating that we choose to put all that information within the same packet. You can actually have 2 separate audits per se, one for financials and one for the grant portion, but we just choose to put it together for ease of access. So if you turn over to page 4 and 5, this is statement 1. This is your financial statement. There on the left side, we list out all the various funds of the district. And then you got your beginning unencumbered cash balances or your cash carryover from the prior year. Then you got your receipts, money coming in the door, and expenditures, money going out the door to get to that ending unencumbered cash balance. As always, one of the things we have to check for is that each fund ends in a positive cash balance. As you glance through that column, you can see you did have one negative fund. That's a grant fund, so the state recognizes that you got to spend that money a lot of times before you can receive the receipts back. So they notate that that is allowable. That next column is your accounts payable. These are those bills that are paid after year end for services attributable to the period 2025. And then finally, your far right column is your ending cash by fund by bank balance, which you can see ties down below on the bottom of page 5 to the various accounts held by the district, broken out by the various types. I always like to point out there on page 5 too, we have those agency funds that we subtract out. Those are funds that are held in the district's bank accounts, but they don't belong to the district. So a lot of them are student activity funds, and we'll see a schedule of those later on. Turn over to page 6. We've got the footnotes, kind of the words behind the numbers. I'm just going to go highlight these, go through the ones that have major changes, but you'll see that a lot of them are kind of boilerplate, just required to be in here. And with that in mind, we talk about footnote number 1, which is one of those kind of boilerplate ones. Talks about KMAG, talks about Kansas budget law, talks about the makeup of the district. Really no major changes within that footnote. But one thing I always like to point out within this one is on page 8, kind of halfway up the page under that numbered list. We just talk about that revenue neutral rate hearing. That's kind of been new for the last 3 or 4 years. So we just notate that you did have a revenue neutral rate hearing for this budget period. On page 9, we have footnote number 2, which is stewardship, compliance, and accountability. This regards any kind of statutory or regulatory issues within the district we notate during the audit. That long paragraph talks about that negative cash balance I mentioned earlier, cites the statute that makes that allowable. And then the very last sentence just talks how the district was in compliance with the budget laws. You didn't have any budget or funds spent over budget, and we'll see a schedule of that later on. Footnote number 3, there at the bottom, those first 4 paragraphs are pretty kind of cookie cutter. Just talk about some statutes regarding how the district can invest their funds, where the money can be held, so on and so forth. If you turn over to page 10, that very first paragraph at the top gets into some numbers directly pertaining to the district. Biggest thing we always take away from this one is just that all your funds were secured at year end. So you didn't have any unsecured funds sitting out there in the bank. Footnote number 4, I kind of brush over because we see that same information on footnote number 5, but it just lists out any lease obligations entered into by the district for which you're kind of purchasing the equipment over time and you're going to own it at the end of that period. This just gives a little bit of information. If you turn over to page 11, footnote number 5, you see that same information here. It's a little maybe easier to read in this table format. Up there at the top, we just list out any debt instruments held by the district. Any new ones. So we had some new ones with the Apple lease, some more computers and technology items. Any reductions or principal paid during the year, that balance at the end of the year, and then your interest paid. As always, I like to highlight the schedule too at the bottom of page 11. Always good to kind of flag this within here. That's your future long-term debt schedule. Lists out all the various instruments up above and shows you kind of over time how they're going to be paid out when they come due. So really good when it comes to budgeting to kind of keep this in your back pocket. So as you make decisions, you can kind of refer back to this on when those debt instruments will come off the books. Footnote number 6 there on page 12 is right to use contracts. These are agreements we've entered into, but you're not actually going to own the equipment at the end of the period. You're just kind of renting it per se. And we have some office equipment as well as some rental of space and buses. So for the year ended June 30, 2025, those amounts paid out for those was a little over $238,000. And then you can see we have the future agreements or payment amounts that have been entered into upon the current agreements. Footnote number 7 is defined benefit pension plan footnote. The first 8 or 9 paragraphs of that footnote are pretty cookie cutter. Just talk about capers, what's going on at the state level with trying to get that funded, and so on and so forth. There on page 13, we have 2 paragraphs that kind of pertain directly to the district. That's the third and fourth ones down. The third one just talks about how much was remitted on behalf of employees, a little over $3.9 million. And then that next one is that net pension liability, kind of always that scariest one in here. That's that amount you would owe for retirement obligations if the state were to ever quit funding capers. Obviously, don't ever foresee that happening, but since it is an underfunded plan, and you can see that number is pretty large, a little over $35 million, and we're just required to disclose that within the footnotes. Last few here, footnote number 8 is other long-term obligations from operations, essentially focused on kind of any vacation and sick benefits as well as early retire benefits. There on page 13, all the way down to almost the bottom of page 14, we just talk about kind of what the policies are of the district. At the very bottom of page 14, we kind of estimate what that liability is of those hours that carry over from the end of the year to the new year for those employees that retain those hours. And it's a little over $170,000, just simply taking those hours times their rate of pay at the end of the year. On page 15, we get to those early retirement incentive payment amounts. And here we just disclose what was paid out in 2025, a little over $345,000. And then we just notate kind of what those projected future payments are based on our current staff. And you can see those are listed in that table as well. Footnote number 9 is risk management, just another one of those cookie cutter ones that essentially says that you mitigate your risk of loss through the purchase of insurance. And then footnote number 10 on page 16 is another one, talks about contingent liabilities. This relates to those grants. Always possible in the future, a grantor could come in and say you didn't spend those funds how they envisioned, so you owed some of that back. So there's always that potential contingent liability out there with those grants. Last 2 footnotes there is interfund transfers. Biggest thing there is just that each transfer had statutory authority to be made. And then finally, subsequent events. This is anything major that happens from the end of the year to when we issue the audit, kind of out of the ordinary, different for the district, but we didn't feel like we had anything that rose to that level. Now we get to that supplementary information that I talked about. There on page 17, this is the budgetary comparison schedule. Biggest column you always want to focus on this schedule is the very far right column, and that's that variance over under column. A negative number here is a good thing. That means you are under budget in all your funds. So as you glance through here, you can see you met that requirement. Outside of that, we just talk about what those budgeted funds are, what that certified budget is, any adjustments to comply with the legal max. So those are adjustments based on enrollment, adjustments for qualifying budget credits. These extend the budget, things like reimbursed expense, grant proceeds, loan proceeds, kind of outside sources paying for things to get that total budget, which we compare to those total expenditures. The next page is 18, all the way back to page 42 are the individual fund summary statement schedules. This just goes into more information, what's going on within those individual funds. All that summarized information on statement 1 comes from these individual schedules, and it just breaks it down by sources. So, are the receipts tax dollars, were they grant dollars, etc., state aid. And then you've got the expenditures broken down into the various categories required by KSD as well. This is where that prior year information comes into play too, so you can kind of see what's going on one year to the next. You've got your budget by line item and that variance over under by line item. Always like to remind boards, you glance at that variance over under by line item, you're going to see some big swings because we're kind of budgeting out in the future a little ways. And so that's perfectly fine. You're bound in total by fund, not necessarily by line item. So the biggest number you always want to focus on is that total number at the end of each of those funds in that column. All the way back on page 43 through 46, this is Schedule 3. These are those agency funds that I talked about earlier. So here we just list out all those various agency funds, and then we've got those receipts, money coming in the door, and those disbursements, cash going out to get to that ending cash balance. Just kind of gives you a running total of kind of the activity within those agency funds during the year. The following 3 pages there, 47 through 49, are the district activity funds. These are other funds that are held within our district, and actually things that belong to the school, so like our gate receipts, things like that, that actually do belong to the district at the end of the day. So this is similar. We just list out kind of that running total of what's going on with the beginning balance, money coming in, money going out, and that ending balance. Starting on page 50, we get to that kind of grant portion of the audit I mentioned earlier. Page 50 and 51 is the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. Here we list out all the various federal grants received and spent during the year by the district. They're broken out in the various departments of the government. So we've got a Department of Ed and then Department of Agriculture. And then it just talks about who passed through the money, as well as notates what those grants are, notates if there's a special number assigned by the state. And then you've got that assistance listing number, which is a 5-digit number assigned by the federal government for each of those grants. Pass through to subrecipients, which would be any grants that you received that you in turn granted out to others. Receipts, the grant dollars received, and then expenditures, the amount spent. Overall, we're required to test a certain percentage. It's 40% of the total grant dollars. So for this year, the grant that we tested was the child nutrition cluster, doing things looking at meal reporting, were the numbers reported accurate, looking at financial reports, looking at verification of the reduced and free income lunches, things of those nature. Those are kind of the things we tested for those grants. Page 52 and 53, I kind of make light of this report. This is focusing on internal control over financial reporting. So this is any kind of issues as far as bank reconciliations and things of those nature. We don't actually issue opinion within this report. We just would notate any issues we found during the audit, and we didn't have any to report within there. The next 3 pages are set up in that same format as the very first report we looked at, that independent audit report. But this one's focused on those grants, so that child nutrition cluster. Same format, so those first 2 paragraphs are the most important one. The first one just talks about what we audit, which is just making sure that the grant complies with the requirements as issued by the government. And then the second being the opinion paragraph, which we believe, based on our testing, that the grant did comply with all the material requirements of the government. So we did issue that unmodified opinion on that. Outside of that, it's kind of that same format where we talk about those bases for opinion, management's and auditors' responsibility for compliance, report on any internal control issues over compliance, and then just notate the purpose of the report. If you've been on these boards before and listened to this report before, you'll tell me next time, go to page 57. We could have skipped every other page in there because this has all that information printed concisely. This is how the government likes to see it, one page and see exactly what they need to know. Talks about at the top that financial statement opinion, adverse on GAAP, unmodified on regulatory basis of accounting. Any issues with internal control over financial reporting, which were no. Issues with federal awards, which was no. That federal award program opinion, which was unmodified. Any audit findings marked as no. Identifies that program that we tested, so that child nutrition cluster, the distinguishing for type A and B programs, and then that auditee qualified as low risk auditee, as well as any findings. A couple things to point out there that I want to talk about too is that low risk auditee is always going to be marked no for the district, but all that means is it changes the percentage of grant dollars tested. The reason behind that is one of the requirements to be a yes is that it either has to follow GAAP or a state required basis of accounting. KMAG is optional, so we elect to follow it. So that's where it always triggers that no. And as you can see, there were no current year findings for the audit. And we'll talk on the prior year ones there on page 58, come to talk about how those were resolved. So as you can remember in previous years, we had issues with those district activity funds. There was receipts not being issued to support those amounts that were deposited for building accounts. We recommended that, you get pre-numbered receipt books, you follow them, you issue receipts, and so on and so forth during our testing. So we We kind of looked from January on to when we were there, and then Lisa kind of went through another training with the staff, and we notated that those issues had been resolved. There were still a couple minor ones out there, but they didn't rise to the level of feeling that it materially affected the audit and needed to be issued as a finding. So that's a good mark for the district that there wasn't any current issues, and it appears that that had been resolved as of the end of the year. Finally, there's a couple of letters there that are stapled together that were in the very front of that blue book. First 2 pages is what they call the presentation letter. Essentially, this is kind of a boilerplate letter that talks about any issues with management when it came to completing the audit. So things like, were they difficult to work with? Did they withhold information, etc.? We didn't have any of those issues to report when it came to completing your audit, but I encourage you to read through those things and maybe see those things we might talk about. Third page in there is our audit adjustments. Pretty minimal list. Nothing really out of the ordinary to point out there. We had some adjustments to some liabilities at the end of the year, some payroll liabilities. And so when we made that adjustment, it affected some ending numbers. So we had to adjust some transfers to get within budget and cash requirements. And then finally, the last few pages in there is what they call the management representation letter. We like to call this one the reminder letter. Essentially, each one of those numbered points is something we should have talked about at some point during the audit. So it's really good to kind of reread that and refamiliarize yourself with it. So as the year goes on, if something happens pertaining to those points, you make sure to tell us about it. So that being said, I'll turn it over to Lisa.
Alrighty, thank you very much, Kyle, and your team for your work on the audit and being flexible with us this year with me being out for surgery. Does any of the board members have questions for Kyle while he's on? Good to go. All right. Well, unless Mr. Wilson, you think he needs to stay on, or are we good to go?
I think he's good to go, and we can finish up with you if you'd like to.
All right, sounds great. Thanks again, Kyle.
Yep, everybody have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're kind of super excited that we have a clean audit. But I also need to shout out some people because it is not possible without my staff. I'm so proud of them. When I started, check reconciliation was a mess. We were trying to get e-finance started. So in 3 years, we've worked through a lot together. And it's not only my business office staff, but the building principals, the directors, the secretaries who are embracing all the changes that have come in full force since I've come on, and really worked hard to improve our policies and procedures and help us being compliant to get a clean audit. With that said, a clean audit can quickly become one with findings if we are not continuously reviewing our policies and procedures. Like he had mentioned, we got a clean audit, but there's still some things that we are communicating with our staff of, hey, you need to make sure you're doing this, or this was completed, but we would like to see it more look like this. One of the things that we did over spring break to ensure we're trying to meet their expectations and give our staff some feedback was we did a receipt audit over spring break. So they sent in the information they had at their buildings. We took them, looked at our deposits, looked to make sure there was receipts with it, explanations with it, they were numbered, and all of that correlated with our policy and procedure we put into place 2 or 3 years ago when I first started, and we noticed this audit had been a continuous the write-up had been continuously throughout a few audits over the years. The only situation that's a little different is the high school bank, because there's only a handful in Kansas. So it kind of makes us and the auditor go a little outside the box that, for me, it's more of lack of control because I'm a money person and I like having all the money here. But we are working with Mr. Cooper and his team of students and the auditor to make sure we are getting those numbered receipts. I actually met with him today, and we're going to order some that are specialty ordered for us that can be used at the bank and meet what we need for our auditor. But yeah, with that said, I want to thank all of you guys for your support over the few years I've been here, and Mr. Wilson. And again, just so proud of my staff and everybody that's helped make this possible. So.
I want to say thank you.
Yeah.
You have done an exceptional job, and thank you. I appreciate your staff too, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, any questions for me? And next year I'll tell them just skip to like page 57. It's the important page. So.
I like your comment about, staying on top of things because you just have to
Yes.
keep improving. And
Local things change at the local level, the state level, the federal level, all those guidelines are constantly changing. And if we don't keep up with them and keep educating our staff, that's a big point too, is I can't do it all. And so we trust them to take the education we provide them. And if we don't, then we won't be successful. So we are constantly looking at how can we be better? Because I like clean audits. They let me relax on vacation. So, all right. Thank
now
you
you can
guys.
exhale. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you.
All right. Moving on, superintendent remarks, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. So my thunder's been stolen a little bit, but I'm gonna do it anyway, because I think it's worth the time to note this. I can remember after my very first audit report, James Adams noticed that I was a little bit frustrated. And I remember him saying to me, well, they always find something. It's their job. Like they have to find something, don't they? And I'm like, no, I've been through enough of these that were unmodified that's not necessarily true. And he assured me that as long as he could remember, there had always been something on there. And if you know James was on the board for a really long time. I want to say either 16 or 18 years that James was on the board. You might remember a couple of years ago, we brought to you how we were going to, they hit us with segregation of duties. So we separated some of our duties so that they were multiple people doing the things. Activity funds has been an issue, it seemed like year after year. Bank reconciliations took us a couple of years to really get a handle on, because they were, if you don't have your previous years done, you don't have a starting point. So then the starting point changes and you have to do them all over again. So bank reconciliations took us a while. We had an allowable cost issue that we just had to clean up that wasn't reporting our, it was title something. I don't even know what it was, to be honest. And then obviously Lisa mentioned the receipts. We've worked really hard. And I'm gonna repeat some of the things she said, because a clean audit, unmodified opinion is never guaranteed. It takes really one person not following the procedures and processes to really get a bad report. A clean report, though, does show us that the years of hard work that Lisa and her team have put in updating our processes, training our staff, working so that that it's working and that our processes actually are able to be followed and are manageable by our staff. Because if you put processes in that perfectly work, but your staff can't understand them and follow them, it doesn't matter. It's a testament to Lisa and her team, as well as our schools who are doing a good job of following those really good processes. I couldn't be honestly more proud of Lisa and her team for being faithful stewards of federal, state, and local taxpayer funds. That is a huge issue for me. And so thank you, Lisa. Thank you to your team. But I also kind of like what Lisa did. It wasn't just lip service. Thank you to the board for your patience. You've heard these things, and it seems like they should be able to get a report one year. You should have it all cleaned up the next year, and it just takes time. And you guys have been wonderfully patient with us so that Lisa could make some real lasting change that I think is going to endure for some time. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. And yes, thank you very much, Lisa. Congratulations to you and your team. President remarks, I just have a few and then we can open up to the board. Can't believe it's April and the end of the school year is just next month. That's really crazy, but exciting as well. And so I'm just really hoping that our teams will push through to the end and get to the end of May. Just a reminder to our board, we have the SEAF brunch on Friday. So I hope to see some of you there and we get to,
Seven.
it is, it's quite early, but that's what breakfast is for. Come on. It's brunch. That's the best. And so we get to hear the annual report and see the annual report. So I'm excited for that. And then at the end of April, I'll be headed to DC for the KASB advocacy trip. This is a little different than what we have done in the past. KASB is no longer a member of NSBA, and so they teamed up with Oklahoma and Nebraska school board associations, and they're putting on their own little conference and also an advocacy day on the Hill. So I will be doing that at the end of April, and I will report back in May of what that consisted of. And I think that's all that I have. Anybody else have anything?
I did have, not necessarily a positive one though. Miss Denise at Mathis Early Learning Center, the custodian, has been facing cancer. I just wanted to, from us, tell her through the record that we're all thinking of her and we're all really hoping she does pull through. So
Great. Yeah, we're definitely sending some prayers and thoughts for her while she battles. Anything else from anybody? We're good? All right, let's move it forward. The disposition of business by consent. Do I need to announce now? Or can we go to vote? I'm gonna recuse myself from the vote.
You can do it after.
Okay.
After the discussion.
Okay. Disposition of business by consent. Need a motion.
I so moved.
It's been moved.
second,
Second. Discussion. I would like to recuse myself from this vote as there's some personnel in there that is part of my family, so I would like to take myself away from the vote, but all in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. What do we got? Discussion items. We have curriculum and instruction report.
Security.
Security. Oh, sorry.
Mr. Holland.
Is that not on here?
Yeah.
Executive, it says executive.
I'm on paper, people.
So.
So was.
Oh, yeah, this is different than. So
was I.
I know, I'm like,
But it says.
just if you pass it for a second, I'll introduce why it's odd.
I will pass it to Mr. Wilson.
So we've been doing our program evaluations for our different programs. Some of our programs are departmental programs, and some of them are programs like SEL and some things that are programs within a department. Our security department is doing a program evaluation this week, but as we listen to, they always do the evaluation for our administrative staff beforehand. As we did that program evaluation, we realized that there are some things in there that we don't want to be public. One of the exceptions for the Kansas Open Meetings Act is we do not need to do safety and security things that could cause vulnerabilities. And so we're gonna ask Mr. Bond to do the program evaluation for you, actually in executive session. 10-15 minutes, is that good? Okay,
Well, then I make a motion. Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
yes.
I make a motion to go into executive session to discuss the program evaluation for school safety and crisis response pursuant to the exception under COMA for school security matters to ensure the security of the school, its buildings, and or its systems is not jeopardized, and the open meeting will resume in the boardroom no later than 6:55. We will bring in Mr. Bond and Mr. Wilson.
How about Mr.
And Marty Neinston. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Right, thank you, Mr. Bond. We will move on to
Thank you.
Megan, curriculum and instruction report.
Good evening. As you can see through a lot of the events in the curriculum instruction report, we are full force into all of the end of the year activities and festivities. So a lot of things going on. The two things that I just wanted to highlight for you, the first is on page 2. I just wanted to be sure to bring your attention to the student follow-up data. I just thought it's very interesting data. As a reminder, this is data that comes to us from last year's graduating seniors regarding their satisfaction with their high school experience and what it is that their pathway completion is preparing them for, like what their next steps are post-graduation. So you can see the past 2 years, and the years up at the top are the graduating years. So on the far right, that's our most recent data from the graduating class of last year's 2024 to 25 school year seniors. A lot of the numbers are fairly similar, so not a bunch of big shifts or changes. It shows that our student population does have some trends in what it is that their post-secondary offerings are like. But again, just no big ahas there. Just wanted to make sure that you guys got your eyes on that data that we pull and submit to KSDE this time every year. And then just the other reminder I have for you at the top of page 3 is that next week is our KISA School Improvement Day. I've done several reminders about KISA over the course of the school year. So next week is the big day where we really come together as a team and talk about what our action plan is going to be for next year in regards to standards alignment and structured literacy. We've been gathering feedback from building leadership teams over the past couple of weeks. The entire KISA School Improvement team does meet this week on Thursday before the few who are going to the School Improvement Day next week. And so we'll kind of have our final meeting and discuss together what some of those pieces will be like on our action plan. So that is coming up. Any questions for me?
Thanks, Megan.
Thank you.
Ms. Deidre, special services report.
Yeah, good evening. I would like to discuss the bulk of my report, the December 1 count. December 1 count is the count of students that are provided special education services on the day of December 1, and it takes about 3 months in order to get that report completed. We determine staffing, we determine LRE, least restrictive environment, and of course funding for students with disabilities. It's very interesting to me, and I thought I'd point out a couple of things that I think some of you may have noticed, and I know did notice as well. Number one, the increase of our students in the last 5 years with the autism exceptionality has been an ongoing trend over the last several years. We also notice it in our specific STAR classrooms, our students with autism at Northern Hills. An example would be that's really significant this year is in the past, we typically have 1 or 2 students from MELC that's transitioning to that program. This year, we're considering 6 students. So we have a big population of students with significant intensive autism needs. And when I say intensive needs, I want you to know what I'm talking about. So I'm talking about students that are nonverbal, they have limited communication, repetitive behaviors, difficulty with flexibility and routines, significant sensory needs like noise, things like that, as well as a higher risk of meltdowns, self-injury, or injuring others even. Possible, I think about to myself, possible reasons for this increase is, and I've seen this trend recently, that students are coming to us when they're 3 because they have those intensive needs prior to even entering MELC, that parents have gotten supports outside of school and they have that diagnosis coming into MELC. So we have students more that have that disability prior to coming, but also because of those intensive needs, our school psychologists can give an educational diagnosis at an earlier age as well. So we do have that early identification reason, as well as just their students with more significant needs in autism. And when I talk to my cohorts in Region 2, when we meet on a monthly basis, they see the same trends in their schools as well. We'll talk about that in just a minute if you have questions. Another trend that I saw was the decrease in students' developmental delay. which has been a trend as well. And that is the only disability out of the 13 disabilities that has an age limit. If you think about that, you can only have a developmental disability by the day they turn 10, their birthday. They have to have another disability that you can no longer diagnose them with a developmental disability. And the reason that is because that it's harder when they're younger to exactly be clear on what their disability is, and you don't know if it's a long-term delay or if it's truly a disability. So yeah, our psychologists have to tease that out, and the law allows for that. But I think what I just said with autism is the reason why maybe we don't have as many students with that developmental delay disability is because that we can diagnose earlier now. Students are coming to us, but also just within our district, the population, our enrollment is decreased at our earlier K-1-2 level. As our enrollment is down, the smaller we have the pool of students that can be diagnosed with developmental disability. So those are my thoughts in regards to that. And with those thoughts, even though our total number 624 looks like it's going down, I want to remind you that we are serving more students with more intensive needs than we ever have before, even though our number is down to 10 and the funding system hasn't completely kept up with that. And so even though our needs are increasing, even if our needs are increasing, we need the funding to provide services for those students because we have to provide the services. That's the law. And so I thought I'd remind you that those in the legislature as well, you understand that for sure, that no matter what, that we need the funding for our students, even if our numbers are going down because our population is changing. And I've said that how long now, for a couple of years.
I've known you
Saying
one
that
time, so yeah.
increase in the disabilities, and this is what I believe shows that as well. So do you guys have any questions about any of that or thoughts?
Well, the other one I noticed up there is speech and language increased quite a bit too, but that could just be the early
Early intervention as
diagnosis,
well.
yeah.
But all of those students with autism, I would bet you most of them have speech and language
Yes.
needs as well.
Yes.
So that comes
this
in
overlap.
because
Yeah.
just a big part of autism, students with autism.
I feel like
Yeah.
2024 was kind of a weird year though, because if you look at 25 and compare it to 23 and 22, except for DD, it's kind of the same.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's true. You're welcome. Thank you.
Miss Deidre. Facilities and grounds, Mr. Lance. Hello.
So I want to start off on baseball. Bushnell came to me at the beginning of the season and he noticed that the home plate started rising up. When we got boys would slide in, they'd twist their ankles or they'd tear up through the side of the leg. So we had the home plate redone, put a new one in, and then we put down new carpet, starting tomorrow on the right side home plate. We're gonna be switching out that carpet. We're digging a hole
Do you
through
just
the
call
carpet.
it carpet?
Yep, I call it carpet.
Okay.
It feels like carpet when you just carpet. So, we're replacing that home plate side for right side tomorrow morning. Soccer today, we had about 8 or 9 seams that had come loose. So they went through pretty much that whole soccer field, but they got about 8 or 9 of seams put back together. So the next one is Logan, the playground, the canopy. We've got all the concrete around it replaced from when we dug it out. Dirt's down to 8 inches. Now with all the rain coming in, now we can't get in there because we'll sink up to our knees with all that soft dirt underneath there. And it will lay down the ground cover and then we'll put the mulch on it hopefully next week. And the basement.
Yay.
Jay's area, food service. Since we did the sidewalk around the outside and the foundation, wanted to make sure that we didn't have any more leaks. We don't, so we replaced the carpet and officially moved Kay back in.
She's back in the dungeon.
So she's officially moved back in and
Very happy to be in the dungeon.
Yeah. I'm sure she is.
and that is what we sort of did last month. So any questions?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good work.
Thank you. Next is Jeff and Megan,
Oh,
Yep.
mostly Megan, a little bit of Jeff.
Got 3 files up here for user agreements, device loan agreements. No changes on the student device loan agreement or the student AUA from last year. We did change the format of the same information in the employee AUA, so it's basically saying the same thing. It's just in a little bit more digestible and readable format with an addition from a new law that's put in. Let you touch on
Yep.
that.
If you scroll to the end of it.
That's the right.
Opposite of what I was doing. We have the updated information on. Sorry.
There it was. I
Yeah, you
think
passed
that's-
it. It's at the top of page
Here,
3.
you scroll, because the scrolling is throwing me off.
Pretty sure.
Oh, down one more
Yeah.
page,
Yeah.
top of the second page, right
Yeah,
here.
right
Here we go.
$22.99. There we go.
Yes, so we wanted to be sure to include information related to the recent legislation around employee communication with students via social media. So that is now included as the most updated statement within our employee AUA. The language is taken directly from the bill so that we are staying consistent in the same language and the expectations for our staff.
Yep.
That's the main change.
And this will, the content is still the same, so the way that this gets signed digitally every year is the staff go through the AUA portion of our KASB learning management system. So we'll probably just have to add a little blurb in for $22.99 here, so they understand that part of it. Content is the same, so I don't think we need to really completely overhaul that, but we'll get with them and make sure that gets taken care of.
Was there monitoring for that, or? The apps just simply can't be installed on the.
I'm not sure how they're.
Yeah, so I mean, we can't install devices on personal cell phones or communication devices. So there's it's really just, this is the expectation and you are signing the agreement. Everybody has to sign it and go through that at the beginning of the year. So if they are found to be in violation of that, that would be a conversation with that.
There's no way we
Broader
can.
than just a school device.
Exactly.
Yes.
This is on social media,
Okay.
they are not allowed to direct message a student.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. And so it's a pretty broad thing. We just have to monitor, and principals will work with their staff as well. And then we have to monitor it.
Yeah, any platform that the school can monitor, control is okay.
Yes,
Facebook, some we
Yeah.
don't control.
the
So
law actually applies to other laws.
gotcha.
Yep. Makes sense.
Okay, any questions from us?
Any questions? Nope. You're good.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are on to Marty.
Lots of bids.
It's that time of year. He does a diligent job of putting everything together as far as the vendors that we have to have and getting the RFPs. And she is recommending that we go with Evco Wholesale
Say that again.
Wholesale Food Corp and F&A Food Sales Incorporated. The second is worse, I'm afraid. And with milk, by the way, those were the only 2 vendors that we received bids from. And on milk, as is usually the case, the only bid, or the 2 bids that we've got were Anderson, Erickson Dairy and Highland Dairy. And our recommendation would be to go with Highland Dairy Foods Company.
The food bid is a little different, and Kay, correct me please if I botch this, but actually those 2 companies, she goes through line item by line item and says, from this company, we're gonna buy, this is the better product. And so it's not like a wholesale bid for all of the food, because they don't know what we're gonna buy. Right. But line item by line item, did you say 350 of them?
Yep.
Wow. So takes a little bit of time.
Wow.
Any questions?
Knowing Kay as well as I do, I make the motion to approve this.
Moved and seconded several times. Any more discussion? Hearing none, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries, Ms. K. You're good.
Not yet. She's got more.
Oh, okay. Starting again.
You bet. We need to replace one set of steamers at the high school. And we've got bids from those 4 companies. And the bid that we are recommending is Sunflower Restaurant at $23,035
Per steamer, right?
for the set. Yes.
For 3 of them. That's for 3, that's for 1. 23,000 for 1.
One set.
One, 3.
Right.
Okay, got it. Okay.
I move that we purchase the steamer from Sunflower Restaurant.
It's been moved.
Second.
Seconded by Braden.
Let's just ask one clarifying question.
Yes, sir.
It says haul away if needed under Sunflower Restaurant. There won't be an additional cost if needed, right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Hey, you always are allowed to speak.
If you'd like to come up to the mic, so you're
Absolutely.
welcome.
I will work with them because there's some parts salvage.
Mm.
Lance and Charles do a great job of salvage parts, so we haven't determined the haul up yet.
Just ask because it's under that one column and not the other, so.
Yeah.
it's clear.
Well, he just clarified for me that he planned.
That's nice. Yes.
All right, any more discussion? Been moved and seconded. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Right. Thank you, thank you. And Marty, are you still up for
So.
bids? Intercom?
A little support there.
Better yet.
Yeah.
This is Jeff's grab bag, right?
So what you'll see is a bid for a stockpile of intercom parts for inventory. The reason we have to do this, and we brought this to your attention a few months ago, but I know you've slept since then. Our intercoms in the district are from 1996. They are the original Bogan multicoms. You remember that? So, however, those were all refreshed and basically gutted and rebuilt from the inside out when we did our last bond issue 10 years ago. So they're technically about 10 years old. Now, this bid is from a new company who we've never worked with before, but was recommended highly to us. And the reason that it's a new company is Sound Products is who we've always gone with and has been our Bogan dealer for decades. They were bought by another company in the last year or so and have lost their Bogan dealership status. So they recommended this new company to reach out and at least get an inventory of parts. The reason why this is kind of sudden is that a deadline has been put on parts availability of June 30th of this year. Once we get to the end of June, you can't even buy parts for these anymore. They are end of lifing the multi-com intercoms. So they are going to continue to support those intercoms for 7 more years. So we can still repair them. And if we have any parts that we purchased, those are under warranty until that period of 7 years expires. So we will be putting a plan together to start replacing building by building our intercom systems over the next 7 years. As we pull those old systems out, we'll harvest parts from those to continue keeping the other buildings running. They're okay and they work fine. But it's time. It's time.
So Jeff, why don't we just replace them all right now?
That's about $1 million project.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. So therefore spreading out over.
And then there's a little bit more on top of it to think about because most of the new stuff is IP integrated. We don't have the network capacity for it right now. So we will, as we renew our network stuff in the next year or so with E-rate, we'll have to build capacity for that.
in all of our buildings. So it's a much bigger project than just ripping out and putting new in. However, the stuff that we will put in, at least even as expensive as it is, we're able to reuse all the infrastructure in all the buildings. So all the speakers and all the buzzers and everything will stay, and we don't have to replace all that. It's not like gutting the whole building and starting over. Otherwise, it's a few million to do that. So that's why this is here.
So I guess this is one of the things that I wonder, is this part of not this particular thing, but the whole intercom system through the district? Is that part of our long range? The long range plan?
Marty, that'd be a
Not
better question. I don't
remembering.
remember it being on there, but
Is on the.
oh,
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, so it might be need to move up.
no, we would need to find money to
Yeah,
be able to do that.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So our hope is that we have enough parts to get us through
Yeah.
until we can find money for a while. So
Yeah.
odds are, I mean, these things have been in place for 30 years. We really haven't had, outside of this little list of things that we replace on a decently regular basis, they just keep going. So we're not in a dire situation by any stretch. So. That's
I see 28 parts.
what's that?
Only see 28 parts.
It's very expensive.
But-
The,
Would 28 parts cover all of our schools? Is that period you
Yeah.
were referencing?
This is so we've had 30 years of data to go with them on what goes bad. The most common replaced thing is a power supply. We haven't had to replace one of those for a year or so, but we've had a couple of years where we've had two go bad in the same year. So
Very
we
important.
kind of,
Very important that our intercom system work. I'm not
correct.
saying I don't support that. I'm just like.
Yeah.
I mean-
The original part, so our bid that we put together to give us basically one of everything, just in case, it's like $175,000 in parts.
Oh, wow.
We can put a building together with new intercom stuff for cheaper than that. So we thought, we had Sound Products. This is their recommendation. This is what I think you need to get by for several
That's what I
years.
was gonna say, this is
Yeah.
to get us by through the
Yes,
process of upgrading.
through
the
that 7
system.
years. Yep. And then
And then-
every building that we do will have a whole tower of parts, which are multiple of this
Yeah.
stuff.
Or say you don't know what to do with.
That's the hope. So. What else?
Any more questions for Jeff?
Great. This is an action item.
Okay,
I need a motion.
I move that we approve the bid from Progressive Electronics for the intercom parts as presented.
Second.
Been moved by Donna, seconded by Keith. Any more discussion? Hearing none, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Gotcha.
Hello, Marty.
Let me try this again.
Okay.
We found with Can Equip that we are able to trade in our old mowers. And we have one that we need to trade in. It has parts that are, I want to put this the right way, falling off. Yeah. So we would recommend that you approve a purchase of a finishing mower from Can Equip with the trade-in allowance. We would pay $22,088.73, and that would be what our recommendation would be. Any questions? And we do have it budgeted in capital outlay.
We do. That was gonna be.
That was my question.
How many? Mowers.
We bought one last year, so
Right.
that was for like seeding acres. This one is like for the Optimus. The oval area up there, and then I've got 3 or 4 of the small.
What color is it?
Yep.
I just need a motion.
I move that we approve the mower deck bid.
Second.
Moved by Michelle, seconded by Kyle. Any more questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise a hand and say aye. Opposed, same sign, motion carried. Hello, Megan.
Hello. Last month, I brought to you the proposal for an updated 6 through 8 science curriculum. The recommendation is Lab 8s as a truly hands-on curriculum that is aligned with the KSDE vision for science education. So tonight, I seek your approval on this curriculum purchase.
First, okay.
I make a motion, oh, sorry.
Okay.
So I make a motion to approve the lab aids quote for $206,000. As we're
Moved by Braden, seconded by Kyle. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries, Megan.
Okay, thank you.
Miss Deidre.
I don't
No.
disagree, but yeah.
What? Last month, I brought to you Mathis Early Learning Center full day programming criteria to allow for some flexibility within choosing our students in the full day program. I ask that you approve the program criteria.
No. So, good question. Christy asked, is this really something the board needs to approve? Typically, it would not be, except for when Mel was started in its first year. The board did act on this. And so since they acted on it and it was a third, in order for us to flex that, I feel like it's appropriate that you allow us more flexibility is what she's asking, not really a specific like we asked many years ago, but a additional flexibility so that the administrator at the building can actually determine the students that are accepted in this program.
Necessarily be a.
Doesn't have to be exactly a certain number. Yes.
Correct. And right now, we'd like the flexibility to determine students for next year, and it is a criteria that's in the handbook. So when you approve the handbook, we'll just take it out if you approve this.
Does anybody oppose to not coming to the board? I didn't really see a purpose for it, but
So do we need to,
no, I don't think
do we need to vote on it?
So we don't need to vote on it?
Right now, it's.
I
I
would
think
say
we should vote on it now, but then.
we would
for
not need to
future-
bring it back again. The only reason we're bringing it is because at one time
Historically.
Yeah,
it was voted on and now we're basically saying allow more flexibility. If you want to add to that, allow more flexibility and allow superintendent or designee to determine that, you can do that. But I don't determine things that the board has decided previously.
would anybody have an issue with allowing this just to be decided by the superintendent and the administrators?
It's a good motion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all right, so move. Yeah, I just said, I make a motion to approve the Milk full day pre-K programming as presented.
Second.
And for future instances, it doesn't have to come before the board. And
Superintendent version space.
the superintendent or its designee can make the approval or, okay, I got it out.
Okay.
Second.
Moved and seconded, any more discussion? Lord, words are hard tonight. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
It's important to me that you guys understand the spirit of the motion. Candace is the only one that has to actually put it into work.
I'm sorry, Candace. Words are hard tonight.
And it's got it. I know she did.
Ooh, okay, capacity recommendations, Mr. Wilson.
Yes, this is, so according to the law, we will determine our non-resident capacity through a formula that we have created. And we bring that and officially post that on our website June 1st. But we bring it to you to approve the tentative capacity for non-resident enrollment. The nice thing about this year is, if I've looked at this correctly, there is not a single grade level that we do not have capacity in. So There is one that is in the single digits, I think. But even that, I don't think that we would get more applications than we have space. So it's my hope that we will not have to turn anybody away with this capacity.
Unless they want a specific building.
Yes,
Right.
if they just want a specific building, but if they're just wanting to get into Seaman School District, then we should have space somewhere.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
So the kindergarten is an estimate, right? Or do we know already how many kindergartners gonna have?
We have a pretty good, and that's why we wait a little bit until June, but even then, we won't know exactly. In our calculation, we leave a little bit of wiggle room for people who might move in. But we have already had kindergarten roundup. So most of our building, we know from the history, how accurate that kindergarten roundup is. There's only really one building that, we don't have 100%. We don't have a pretty good estimate that I would say was within a small percentage. And that's every year. We don't know. We got a small amount at one of our buildings that we think will get more.
That's a lot of open seats.
Yeah, and and that's even with reducing staff to more fit our enrollment. But there's always going to be, especially with 5 elementary schools, there's always going to be smaller class sizes and some that we have class limits. So that always allows some space. And then you can see our middle school, our 9th grade class is that last really big class. Our capacity at 11th and 12th is a little smaller, but our 9th grade class is our last really big class.
I move that we accept the capacity recommendations as presented.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Any more discussion?
The 10th grade number.
Yeah.
Was a big number there.
I didn't think. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mr. Wilson. Non-renewal.
Yeah, I do have an extra copy of that if it's easier for you to read, but that's something for you to read.
Oh.
If you can find it.
I have it on my screen.
That's easier.
I can bring it closer. Thank you. All right, so this is a resolution of intent to non-renew a teacher's contract. Whereas Heather Hauser is currently employed in Unified School District number 345, Shawnee County, Kansas. And whereas the Board of Education of said Unified School District number 345, Shawnee County, Kansas, finds that the contract of Heather Hauser should be non-renewed and that Heather Hauser should be given written notice on or before May 15th, 2026 of the intent of the Board of Education to non-renew her contract for the 2026-2027 school year. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of Unified School District number 345, Shawnee County, Kansas as follows. It is hereby declared to be the intent of the Board of Education of Unified School District number 345, Shawnee County, Kansas, that the employment contract of Heather Hauser as a teacher be non-renewed for the 2026-2027 school year, and the clerk of the Board of Education is directed to give written notice in person or by restricted United States mail to Heather Hauser on or before May 15th, 2026 of the board's intent to non-renew this contract for the 2026-2027 school year. Adopted by the Board of Education of Unified School District number 345, Shawnee County, Kansas, the 13th day of April, 2026. And this has to be a roll call vote.
That was the motion.
That was the
We
motion.
have a second.
Second.
Seconded by Donna. We don't have discussion.
We don't technically discuss this, but I do want to remind people that this is just the intent. This would also come back the next meeting to be finalized.
Okay. Roll call, Candace.
Keith Griffin,
Aye.
Michelle Caudill,
Aye.
Christy Weiler,
Aye.
Alan McNorton,
Aye.
Donna McGinty,
Aye.
Braden Martin.
It has been. Motion passes.
Yeah. it's on-
Yeah.
Yeah, so you get that for
Okay, we have executive session, right? Personnel?
personnel.
All right. I make a motion to go into executive session to discuss confidential employee information pursuant to the exception relating to personnel matters of non-elected personnel. And the open meeting will resume in the order no later than,
And it's 10 minutes? Is that enough? You got 3 items, is that right?
we'll just go 15.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, and the meeting will resume no later than 7:50. And we will invite Mr. Wilson and Tanner Smith into the meeting. Thank you. Seconded by Michelle. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, we are back. This is a resolution of intent to terminate an administrator's contract. Whereas Stephen Meyer is currently employed as an assistant principal in Unified School District number 345, Shawnee County, Kansas, and whereas the Board of Education of Unified School District number 345, Shawnee County, Kansas finds that Stephen Meyer's current contract should be terminated for the reasons hereinafter set forth. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of Unified School District number 345, Shawnee County, Kansas. Section 1, that is hereby declared to be the intent of the Board of Education of Unified School District number 345, Shawnee County, Kansas, to terminate the employment contract of Stephen Meyer. Section 2, that the clerk of the Board of Education is hereby authorized and directed to give written notice promptly to Stephen Meyer of the board's intent to terminate his contract. Section 3, that the notice shall contain the following, which are reasons for the board's intent to terminate said contract. The employee engaged in conduct that is inconsistent with the professional standards expected of district employees and violated Board of Education policy below, GAAF, emergency safety interventions, and CB administrator ethics. Section 4, that the notice shall state that he is entitled to a hearing before the Board of Education with the regard to the board's action, provided that he files a written request for such a hearing with the clerk of the Board of Education within 15 days after the date of the notice. Section 5, that said Stephen Meyer be suspended with pay as of the 14th day of April 2026 until further action of the board, and that Tanner Smith, Human Resources Director, is hereby authorized and directed to immediately notify Stephen Meyer of such suspension. Adopted by the Board of Education of Unified School District number 345, Shawnee County, Kansas, the 13th day of April 2026. This is a roll.
Second.
Yes, I think so.
Been moved by Christie, seconded by Michelle. Roll call vote.
Keith Griffin,
Aye.
Michelle Conrad,
Aye.
Christie Wild,
Aye.
Alan Martin,
Aye.
Donna McKenzie,
Aye.
Brandon Moore.
As motion carries. Negotiations?
Yes.
This is a lot of reading.
5 minutes.
Okay. I make a motion to go into executive session to discuss negotiations pursuant to employer-employee negotiations under COMA, and the open meeting will resume in the boardroom no later than 7:51. Need a second? Seconded by, I don't know, somewhere, Keith, seconded by Keith. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Yay, we're